What is this?
Good afternoon, all of you. This session is about the sedimentary cycle. The previous session we discussed about gaseous cycle and we learned two types of gaseous cycle, that is the nitrogen cycle and the carbon cycle. Then sedimentary cycle. Sedimentary cycles, the main reservoir of the sedimentary cycle is the lithosphere. Lithosphere is the main reservoir of the sedimentary cycle, from which the nutrients are released by the deep sediments by weathering of rocks. That's known as sedimentary cycle. So in sedimentary cycle, the main reservoir is lithosphere. And lithosphere is the solid part of the earth. The solid part of earth is called lithosphere. The solid part of earth is called lithosphere. Then the lithosphere consists of the earth has different layers, that is the crust, mantle and the core, and the lithosphere will constitute for the crust and the mantle layer. Then like here you can also see lithosphere, which is the solid earth in which the rock is present. The solid particle or the rocks are present in the lithosphere, and that is a reservoir of the nutrients in the sedimentary cycle. And the two examples of sedimentary cycles are sulfur and phosphorus cycle. The two cycles which you have to learn under this sedimentary cycle is sulfur cycle and phosphorus cycle. Sulfur cycle is sulfur cycle. First is sulfur cycle. And most of the earth's sulfur is tied up on rocks and salts. Earthilula, most of the part of the sulfur is locked in rocks and also under the sea. Under the sea and rock, sulfur is locked. And the importance of sulfur is: one, it is a sedimentary cycle, and two, it is a imperfect cycle. I've said the biogeochemicals are of two types: perfect cycle and imperfect cycle. If there is complete 100% replacement of nutrients, that is called a perfect cycle. Nitrogen cycle and carbon cycle are examples of perfect cycles, and imperfect cycles are the biogeochemical cycles in which the nutrient cycling is not 100%. So sulfur cycle is a imperfect cycle and it is a sedimentary cycle. Then most of the earth's sulfur is tied up on rocks and salt, and it is an imperfect cycle, and the main reservoir of sulfur is rocks, soil and ocean. And the sulfur is very important in the functioning of proteins, because sulfur is a part of proteins. Then it is present in enzymes of plants and animals, and it is present in proteins, amino acids, vitamins, enzymes, etc. And the sulfur is very much essential for plants as well as animals. Now let's see the different steps in sulfur cycle. I said the main reservoir of sulfur is rocks, or it is present or it is locked in lithosphere. So the main steps are: one, mineralization of organic sulfur to the inorganic forms, that is from rocks the rock will undergo weathering. Weathering means when it is subjected to degradation in the presence of rain or in presence of water. It will undergo weathering and or erosional runoff and decomposition of organic matter, and as a result it is carried to the terrestrial and aquatic system. So from the rocks, first step, rock will undergo weathering. 2, it will reach the water bodies, then and aquatic ecosystems. Then next is, it is also released by the volcanoes. Through volcanic eruption also the sulfur will reach the air. The smaller reservoir, so the atmosphere, when it reaches the atmosphere, it is present only in very less amount. Then it is present in very less amount in the atmosphere, and sulfur circulates on a global scale along with carbon, and usually rather than free sulfur, sulfur is always found associated with other elements such as carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, etc. So usually sulfur will be present as sulfur dioxide, then hydrogen sulfate, hydrogen sulfide, then etc. And the sulfur is present in air, water and soil in the associated forms. It is found associated with some other elements in the atmosphere. Now, the sulfur will reach the atmosphere as hydrogen sulfide. So, rocks-ilulla sulfur by natural weathering will reach the atmosphere as hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide. Hydrogen sulfide അല്ലെങ്കിൽ sulfur dioxide ആയിട്ട് exist ചെയ്യുന്നത് by the combustion of fossil fuels. When fossil fuels are burned, sulfur will reach the atmosphere by as sulfur dioxide. This the hydrogen sulfide is also oxidized to sulfur dioxide, and the atmospheric sulfur dioxide is carried back to the earth as sulfuric acid. That I will tell you. The burning of fossil fuels. You can see here, I said the volcanoes release large amount of sulfur dioxide, as well as sulfur dioxide will reach the atmosphere by the combustion of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels burn such as petrol, diesel, or burning of firewood burn ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴേക്കും sulfur dioxide will reach the atmosphere. It will combine with water. Sulfur dioxide will combine with water to form sulfuric acid. I said this in the previous class also. Sulfur will combine with water to form sulfuric acid, and it reaches back to the atmosphere through rain as acid rain. The sulfur dioxide can also react with oxygen, dust particles, etc. and form volcanic smog. അപ്പോൾ സൾഫറിന്റെ മെയിൻ സോഴ്സ് എന്തൊക്കെയാണ്? സൾഫറിന്റെ മെയിൻ സോഴ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ലിത്തോസ്ഫിയറിലാണ്. മീൻസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ലോക്ക്ഡ് ഇൻ റോക്സ്. ആൻഡ് സൾഫർ എപ്പോഴും ഫ്രീ ആയിട്ട് എക്സിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാറില്ല, കമ്പൈൻഡ് സ്റ്റേജിലാണ് എക്സിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. സൾഫർ വെതറിങ്, അതായത് റോക്സ് ഡീഗ്രേഡ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ റീച്ച് ദ അറ്റ്മോസ്ഫിയർ. അറ്റ്മോസ്ഫിയറിൽ എത്തിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഓൾവേസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ഫൗണ്ട് in the combined state such as sulfur dioxide or hydrogen sulfide. Usually it is found like that. Then sulfur dioxide is usually formed by the burning of fossil fuels, and sulfur dioxide will combine with water and reach back as acid rain. So this is the impact. And so what happens is, when it reaches the sulfur in the form of sulfates, SO4, sulfur in the form of sulfate is taken up by plants. അങ്ങനെ എത്തുന്ന സൾഫേറ്റ് വെതറിംഗ് വഴി സൾഫേറ്റ് ആയിട്ട് ഓക്സിജനുമായിട്ട് കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്ത് സൾഫേറ്റ് ആയിട്ട് എക്സിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സൾഫറിനെ will be taken up by plants and will incorporate the sulfur. For example, just see here, this is rock. Rockil നിന്നും rock is subjected to weathering. Rock is subjected to weathering and sulfur reached the atmosphere, and this sulfur will combine with oxygen and form sulfates. Will combine with oxygen to form sulfates, and this sulfate is taken up by plants. This sulfate is taken up by plants, and when an animal eats this plant, the sulfur will reach the body of animal. This is how it is going on. Sulfate is taken by, so sulfates or SO4 is absorbed by plants through the root. So from the plants it will reaches the consumers or the animals, and from the living organism sulfur is carried back to the soil. When this organisms die, when this plant and animals die, it is degraded and it will reach the soil back, and then it reaches the water bodies also. And thus the sulfur is recycled, and again it undergoes sedimentation, and after sedimentation again will be recycled back to the atmosphere. This is how sulfur is recycled. Now, so the human impact of sulfur cycle is by 1. Burning of fossil fuels will increase the amount of sulfur dioxide. Then sulfur dioxide combines with water in clouds and create acid rain. This acid rain is very much dangerous because it erodes the monuments such as Taj Mahal. The best example is the erosion of monuments such as Taj Mahal by this acid rain. That is the impact of human on sulfur cycle. The main impact is this, and this is how the cycle is going on. You can see here the sedimentation process, and from this sedimented rocks or in water, from water or from the sedimented rocks, the sulfur undergoes weathering and it will reach the plants. The plants uptake this sulfur and it will reach the body of the animals. The plants will be eaten by this herbivorous animals and it will reach the body of animals. And from there, when the animals die and dead and decaying organic matter or dead and decaying this animals will result in again the cycling of sulfur, and this sulfur dioxide also reaches the atmosphere. This is the human impact, that is sulfur dioxide from the combustion of fossil fuels and sulfide metal ores will result in the accumulation of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. It combines with the clouds. It will combine with the clouds or snow and will reach the atmosphere back through rain as acid rain, and this acid rain will affect the plants, monuments, the aquatic ecosystems, etc., because there is a change in pH of water when this acid rain falls on the aquatic or the water bodies. This is what is known as sulfur cycle. This is sulfur cycle, which is a sedimentary cycle, and it is an imperfect cycle. So the reservoir of sulfur is lithosphere. Next is phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus cycle is another sedimentary cycle, and phosphorus cycle is the movement of phosphorus from environment to organisms and then back to environment. Environmental sulfur sulfur rock weathering and water bodies water bodies it will reach the body of plants. From there it reaches the living the animals, then again it is recycled back to the earth. But there is no complete replacement. That is why it is known as an incomplete cycle. Next, phosphorus cycle is the movement of phosphorus from environment to organisms and then back to environment. That's known as a phosphorus cycle. And phosphorus cycle is also a sedimentary cycle, and it is a imperfect cycle. Then the unique feature of this phosphorus cycle in comparison with other cycles are it is the slowest cycle. Phosphorus cycle is the slowest cycle, and phosphorus cycle cannot be found in the air in gaseous stage. Phosphorus cycle or phosphorus is always found in the associated form, and phosphorus cycle is the slowest cycle. The atmosphere does not play a significant role in the movement of phosphorus because they are usually solids. Then on land, the phosphorus gradually becomes less available to plants. The phosphorus is very less available to plants and animals because it is usually lost from the environment by runoff. Runoff എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഒഴുകി പോകുന്ന വെള്ളത്തിലൂടെ നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകാറുണ്ട്. Then the principle, that is why it is not that much or 100% that cannot be utilized by the plants. The principal stock or the reservoir of phosphorus. Sulfur we told the sulfur reservoir is rock or in lithosphere. Likewise, the phosphorus is found or present in water. Usually it occurs in water which is logged in soil. Swamp area. They are found in water logged areas. Then rivers, lakes, oceans, rocks and ocean sediments. Usually phosphorus. So the reservoir of phosphorus are sedimentary rocks. They are found in water bodies such as rivers, oceans, in rocks and other sediments. And phosphorus is also very important, like other like sulfur. Phosphorus is also very important because it is a part of the biological molecules such as DNA, and it is present in the membrane cell walls. And in addition, phosphorus is present in large amount in bones and teeth. We are very familiar that our bones and teeth, one of the major constituents of bones and teeth is of course phosphorus. Bones phosphorus is present. Now, the low concentration of phosphorus in soil reduces plants' growth, and that means a particular amount of phosphorus is present for the normal growth of plants. Usually for the plant growth phosphorus is required, but phosphorus is always lost as runoff. I said you earlier. Runoff എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ വെള്ളം ഒഴുകി പോകുമ്പോൾ പെട്ടെന്ന് phosphorus നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകാറുണ്ട്. When the phosphorus is lost, that will affect the plant growth. Then soil microorganisms act as both sinks and sources of available phosphorus in biochemical cycle. Phosphorus microorganisms lock ചെയ്തിരിക്കാറുണ്ട്, and so that is also a source of phosphorus. Then and humans have a major role in the phosphorus cycle by using phosphorus runoff phosphorus നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് usually in fertilizers phosphorus will be added. Ammonia, nitrogen cycle I said urea അല്ലെങ്കിൽ nitrogen is added to fertilizers. അതുപോലെ phosphorus plant growth ആവശ്യമായതുകൊണ്ട് runoff phosphorus കൂടുതൽ നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്നതുകൊണ്ടും in the fertilizers, phosphorus is added. And this increased use of phosphorus in fertilizer will alter the balance or the amount of phosphorus in the atmosphere or in the environment. Now let's see how it reaches the plants. I said about the sulfur also. Phosphate salts are released from rocks. ഇല്ലേ ഇത് sedimentary ആണ്. So they are released from rocks or they are present in oceans or water bodies. Also phosphate is present. So phosphate salts are released from rocks by weathering. Degradation അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മഴ പെയ്യുമ്പോൾ വെള്ളമായിട്ട് കോണ്ടാക്ട് വരുമ്പോൾ സെഡിമെന്ററി റോക്സിലുള്ള ഫോസ്ഫേറ്റ് will dissolve in water. മണ്ണിൽ വെള്ളത്തിൽ dissolve ചെയ്തിട്ട് it will reach the soil and then it will be absorbed by the plants. And the plants phosphorus from phosphorus in rocks in the same way itself. Phosphorus in rocks undergo weathering. The phosphorus in rocks will undergo weathering. It will reach the water. From the water, it reaches the soil. From the soil, plants use this phosphorus, and the plants will. And when animals eat plants, it will reach the body of animals. This is how it is going. It is how the cycling of phosphorus is taking place. And when animals and plants die, phosphates will be returned back to the soils or oceans again by decomposition by the microbes. Animals and plants, when they die, it will be cycled back to the soils. So after that, phosphorus will end up in sediments. വീണ്ടും ഇങ്ങനെ excess ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറേ phosphorusum will sediment in rocks and they will remain there for millions of years. And again, when weathering happens, that cycle is completed. So here you can see the summary of phosphorus cycle. You can also write this phosphorus cycle, the sulfur cycle in the similar pattern. So phosphorus cycle or phosphorus is found locked in rocks and soil. Then runoff. It is by runoff or by after weathering, the phosphorus will reach the lakes and streams, and that's known as inorganic phosphate. And inorganic phosphate is absorbed by plants, and phosphate will be absorbed by plants and it is used for metabolism. And this phosphate is used for metabolism, and this phosphate is a part of NADPH, ATP, ATP phosphate ആണ്. Energy rich molecule ആയിട്ടുള്ള ATP ക്ക് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടും inorganic phosphate ആവശ്യമാണ്. So phosphate plants ൽ നിന്ന് കിട്ടിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ plants ATP synthesis use ചെയ്യും. At the same time, that phosphate is used by the animals which consume these plants. So phosphate will reach ATP. Living organisms ATP phosphate ഉണ്ട്, NADPH phosphate ഉണ്ട്, NADPH ഇതെല്ലാം എനർജി കോയിൻസ് ആണ്. അനിമൽസിലെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ലിവിങ് ഓർഗാനിസത്തിലെ എനർജി റിച്ച് മോളിക്യൂൾസിലെല്ലാം തന്നെ എല്ലാം phosphate is present. They get phosphate like this. Rockil weathering നടക്കുന്നു, weathering ശേഷം they will get and they use ATP for their activities, and when the animal die, they will undergo dead and decomposition, and it will be again sedimented in the rocks. And here you can see these are some of the examples of phosphate rocks. Here you can see rocks will undergo erosion as a result of the erosion from the rock and by weathering. And also by weathering, this phosphate will reach the water, and it will reach the body of aquatic plants, it will reach the body of aquatic animals, and after excretion it is again recycled back to the aquatic condition itself. And coming to the land animals also, the plants eat the animals will eat the plants and it will be recycled after its death. This is known as phosphorus cycle. And the impacts of phosphorus cycle or human impacts on phosphorus cycle are like nitrogen, the increased use of fertilizers will increase. Fertilizers in phosphorus ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു പെട്ടെന്ന് റൺ ഓഫ് വഴി നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്നത് കൊണ്ട് fertilizers phosphorus is usually added, and this increased phosphorus പ്ലാന്റ്സിന്റെ വളർച്ചയ്ക്ക് ആവശ്യമാണ്. ഫോസ്ഫറസ് വേഗം നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്നു മണ്ണിൽ വെള്ളം ഒഴിക്കുമ്പോൾ, വെള്ളം വീഴുമ്പോൾ. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഫെർട്ടിലൈസറിൽ ഫോസ്ഫറസ് കൂടുതലായിട്ട് ആഡ് ചെയ്യും. അങ്ങനെ കൂടുതലായിട്ട് ആഡ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ എഗെയിൻ ഈ പാടങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നും ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന റൺ ഓഫ് എക്സസ് വാട്ടർ ഉണ്ടല്ലോ, റൺ ഓഫ് വാട്ടർ ഒഴുകി പോകുന്ന വെള്ളത്തിലും ഫോസ്ഫറസിന്റെ അളവ് കൂടും. അങ്ങനെ ഫോസ്ഫറസിന്റെ അളവ് കൂടുമ്പോൾ എന്ത് പറ്റും? വാട്ടർവേസ്, സ്ട്രീംസിലും ലേക്സിലും എല്ലാം ഫോസ്ഫേറ്റിന്റെ അളവ് കൂടിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ലീഡ് ടു യൂട്രോഫിക്കേഷൻ. യൂട്രോഫിക്കേഷൻ മീൻസ് എന്താണ്? കൂടുതൽ ന്യൂട്രിയൻസ് കിട്ടുമ്പോൾ അവിടെയുള്ള അക്വാട്ടിക് പ്ലാന്റ്സ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആൽഗ എല്ലാം കൂടുതലായിട്ട് വളരും. This is one impact of human on phosphorus cycle. Hope you understood. ഫോസ്ഫറസിന്റെ പ്രത്യേകത പെട്ടെന്ന് വെള്ളത്തിലൂടെ റൺ ഓഫ്, അത് ഒഴുകി നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോകും. അതേസമയം പ്ലാന്റ്സിന് ഫോസ്ഫറസ് വളരെ അത്യാവശ്യമാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് എന്താണ്? ഫെർട്ടിലൈസേഴ്സിന് ഇത് ആഡ് ചെയ്യും. ഫെർട്ടിലൈസറിൽ ആഡ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ എന്ത് സംഭവിക്കും? അളവ് കൂടുതലാണ്. സോ മോർ ഫോസ്ഫറസ് വിൽ ബി ആഡഡ് ഇൻ ഫെർട്ടിലൈസേഴ്സ്. അത്തരം പാടത്ത് നിന്നുള്ള വെള്ളം when they run off to the aquatic water bodies such as പോണ്ടിലും റിവറിലും ഒക്കെ എത്തിക്കഴിയുമ്പോൾ ആ വെള്ളത്തിലെ ഫോസ്ഫേറ്റിന്റെ അളവ് കൂടുതലായിരിക്കും. അങ്ങനെ ഫോസ്ഫേറ്റിന്റെ അളവ് കൂടുമ്പോൾ എന്ത് സംഭവിക്കും? യൂട്രോഫിക്കേഷൻ നടക്കും. യൂട്രോഫിക്കേഷൻ എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ അവിടെയുള്ള ആൽഗെ കൂടുതലായിട്ട് വളരും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവിടെയുള്ള ഫൈറ്റോ പ്ലാങ്ക്ടൻസ് കൂടുതലായിട്ട് വളരും. ഒരുപാട് ഇങ്ങനെ പായലൊക്കെ കെട്ടി നിൽക്കുന്നതായിട്ട് കാണാൻ പറ്റും. Then humans have great influence by mining. അല്ലേ? പാറയൊക്കെ പൊട്ടിച്ച് അകത്തോട്ട് പോകും. That is mining. Then converting it into fertilizer and shipping fertilizer and products around the globe. Fertilizer എന്താണ്? ഫോസ്ഫറസ് ആഡ് ചെയ്ത ഫെർട്ടിലൈസർ ലോകത്ത് അങ്ങോട്ടും ഇങ്ങോട്ടും ഒക്കെ ട്രാൻസ്ഫർ ചെയ്യുന്നു. Then transporting of phosphate in food from farms to cities. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു സ്ഥലത്ത് നിന്ന് മറ്റൊടത്തോട്ട് ട്രാൻസ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴേക്കും there will not be a balance in the amount of phosphorus. And here also you can see the anthropogenic eutrophication which leads to, and this eutrophication of the water bodies will lead to water pollution or excessive growth of algae. That is about the phosphorus cycle. Hope you understood. The two sedimentary cycle which we learned are sulfur cycle and phosphorus cycle. Both are sedimentary cycle, means the reservoir will be lithosphere. That means they are found in rocks. From rocks, by weathering, it will reach the aquatic bodies and the water will reach the soil. From the soil, sulfur and phosphorus reach the plant. From plant, it reaches the animals. From animals and in plants, it is utilized for the synthesis of DNA, or phosphate is used for the synthesis of ATP, NADPH, etc. And when these plants and animals die, it will be recycled back to the sediments. Now let's see what recycling is. There's always, this is known as recycling. Same thing. Nitrogen anagilum, carbon cycle. We learned about nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus and sulfur cycle. In all this, it's cycling. Cycling means keeps on rotating. There's no stop. There's no halt. Cycle എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ സ്റ്റോപ്പ് ഇല്ല, കറങ്ങിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ് nutrients. So the flow of energy, recycling pathway is the flow of energy through the ecosystem is unidirectional. That is very important. here you can see the flow of energy is always unidirectional. ഒരു സൈഡിൽ നിന്ന് മറ്റൊരു സൈഡിലേക്ക്. It is unidirectional since the energy is increasingly dissipated as heat from one trophic level to another trophic level. Flow of energy flow എപ്പോഴും ഒരു ഇക്കോസിസ്റ്റത്തിൽ അത് യൂണിഡയറക്ഷൻ ആണ്. പ്ലാന്റ്സ് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ എനർജി, അതിനേക്കാൾ എനർജി കുറച്ച് കുറവാണ് ഹെർബിവോഴ്സിന്, കുറച്ചുകൂടെ എനർജി കുറവാണ് ഹെർബിവോറിനെ കൺസ്യൂം ചെയ്യുന്ന അനിമലിന് കുറച്ചുകൂടി കുറവായിരിക്കും അടുത്ത എന്താണ് സെക്കൻഡറി കൺസ്യൂമേഴ്സിന്. സോ ദിസ് ഇസ് എ എനർജി പിരമിഡ് അല്ലേ? ദിസ് ഇസ് ദി എനർജി പിരമിഡ്. എനർജി എപ്പോഴും ലോവർ ട്രോഫിക് ലെവലിൽ ഹൈ ആയിരിക്കും. Lower trophic level energy will be very high because the energy is lost as heat during the energy transfer. So in biogeochemical cycle also there is a cycling of materials. The cycling of carbon, cycling of nitrogen, cycling of oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, etc. All are cycled. The certain common pathways are, I've said you, I'll just tell those terms. We have the certain common pathways are recognized, which are usually recognized in recycling of the nutrients are decomposition pathway, that is in which the dead and decaying organisms are degraded or decomposed by the bacteria and fungi, and so they are called reducers. So they are called reducers, and the common pathways are decomposition pathway. We have learned all this. Decomposition pathway. The decomposition pathway ലാരൊക്കെയാണ്? Microbes such as fungi and bacteria. Decomposition pathway means dead and decaying organic materials are degraded. So the simpler organic molecules are acted upon by this bacteria, and so they are called reducers. Bacteria and fungi are called reducers because they reduce the complex organic material into simpler compounds such as carbon dioxide and water. ഇല്ലേ, ഒരു ഡെഡ് ബോഡിയെ മാറ്റി മണ്ണിനോട് ചേർക്കുകയാണ്. ഡെഡ് ബോഡിയിലുള്ള പ്രോട്ടീൻസ്, DNA എല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്, അതിനെ ഡീഗ്രേഡ് ചെയ്ത് കാർബൺ ഡൈ ഓക്സൈഡും വാട്ടറും നൈട്രജനും ഒക്കെ ആയിട്ട് മാറ്റുന്നു. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് നോൺ ആസ് ഡീകമ്പോസിഷൻ പാത്വേ. സോ ദേ ആർ കോൾഡ് reducers. Fungi and bacteria are called reducers because they reduce the complex dead organisms. ഇല്ലേ, ഒരു പ്ലാന്റ് മുഴുവനെയുള്ള ഒരു പ്ലാന്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഫുൾ ഡെഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു അനിമൽ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അതിൽ പ്രോട്ടീന്, ന്യൂക്ലിക് ആസിഡ് എല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്. അതിനെ എല്ലാം ഡീഗ്രേഡ് ചെയ്ത് എന്താണ്, വെറും വെള്ളവും കാർബൺ ഡൈ ഓക്സൈഡും നൈട്രജനും സൾഫറും ഫോസ്ഫറസ് ഒക്കെ ആയിട്ട് മാറ്റുന്നു. അതാണ് ഫംഗിയും ബാക്ടീരിയയും ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അങ്ങനെ റെഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്ത് കോംപ്ലക്സ് ഓർഗാനിക് സബ്സ്റ്റൻസിനെ റെഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്ത് സിമ്പിൾ സബ്സ്റ്റൻസ് ആയ കാർബണും നൈട്രജനും വെള്ളവും ഒക്കെ ആയിട്ട് മാറ്റുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് അതിനെ റെഡ്യൂസേഴ്സ് എന്ന് വിളിക്കുന്നു. ഫംഗി. ഇനി they are also called transformers. Transformers means they transform. Reduce എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ചെറിയ കോംപ്ലക്സ് ടു, റെഡ്യൂസേഴ്സ് എന്ന് പറയാൻ കാരണം എന്താണ്, കോംപ്ലക്സ് ടു സിമ്പിൾ ആക്കുന്നത് കൊണ്ട്. കോംപ്ലക്സ് ആയ പ്രോട്ടീൻസിനെ എല്ലാം മാറ്റി നൈട്രജനും സൾഫറും ഓക്സിജനും കാർബണും ഒക്കെ മാറ്റുന്നുണ്ട്. They are also called transformers. Why are they called transformers? Fungi and bacteria are called transformers. Transformer means they transform, means change. They change organic molecules, simpler organic molecules, and transform organic into inorganic compounds. Organic to inorganic. So, decomposition pathway. Decomposition pathway is biogeochemical cycles common pathways. Decomposition pathway. Decomposition pathway work they are microbes, mainly fungi and bacteria. They degrade the degrading organic material, the fallen leaves and dead bodies of animals. They are called reducers because they change the complete body of plant or animal into simple nitrogen, carbon, water, etc. Phosphorus, etc. So they are called reducers. Microbes are also called transformers. Why? Because they convert the organic material into inorganic substances. Hope it's clear. Then next is excretion and respiration. Excretion and respiration of organisms contribute to the recycling of materials. The example, in a grassland, I have shown this slide before. The grazing food chain involves the recycling by way of excretion in the grassland. Then recycling by solar energy. Water recycling occurs mainly by the action of solar energy. Why? In the presence of sun, the water vapor will evaporate, then it will be recycled back as rain, and the solar energy indirectly helps in the weathering of rocks also. Weathering of rocks, the soil erosion, adanellam help cheyyunnathu endana rocks, this solar energy. Then fossil fuel mediated recycling by the use of fossil fuels. The combustion of fossil fuels will result in the release of nitrogen and phosphorus back into the atmosphere. Then volcanic activity will mobilize. Volcanic activity sedimented material volcanic activity. So volcanic activity is also helping in recycling because during volcanic activity the sedimented materials will be coming back. Again other sediment veendum. So it is continuing. So volcanic eruption will contribute to the recycling. Now let's see what recycle index is. I hope recycling is clear. Recycling is a general phenomenon which is found in all ecosystems for the proper functioning and cycling of nutrients. Nutrients correct balance cycle cheythokondirikkunnathaneyaanu. So always this recycling is important in an ecosystem. Let's see what recycle index is. Recycle index. It is a measure of the relative amount of recycling. Measure of relative amount of recycling in different ecosystem, and it is the ratio of amount of a material cycling between the compartments. Oro compartments aya lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. Here you can see atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. So recycle index ennu vechal it is a ratio of the amount of a material cycling between. Material cycling evidekkana ee moonu സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലും atmosphere-ലും lithosphere-ലും hydrosphere-ലും ഇങ്ങനെ cycle ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് ഇരിക്കുന്നു. It is rotating. The ratio of amount of a material cycling between hydrosphere, lithosphere and atmosphere within the global system and the total flow. അതിനെയാണ് recycle index എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. Within the global system and the total through flow. ഇനി എന്താണ് through flow? അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് I'll write the equation. Through flow. Through flow. Through flow means the sum of all the inputs minus change in the storage. Sum of all inputs. Sum of all inputs. അതായത് ഇപ്പം ന്യൂട്രിയൻ കാർബൺ 4 കാർബൺ 6 നൈട്രജൻ അതാണ് ഇൻപുട്ട്. sum of all the inputs minus input minus change in storage within the system minus change in storage in the system if it is negative. So, 4 carbon അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 6 carbon വന്നു. There is a change, that is 2. 4 എണ്ണം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, there is a change. So 6 minus 2, that is known as the through flow. So through flow is defined as the sum of all inputs, എല്ലാ ഇൻപുട്സിൽ നിന്നും സ്റ്റോറേജ് മൈനസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനെയാണ്, എത്രയുണ്ടോ ആ സ്റ്റോറേജിനെ മൈനസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനെയാണ് ത്രൂ ഫ്ലോ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So recycle index is the ratio of amount of material cycling in the compartments and the through flow. Through flowയും compartmentsൽ തമ്മിലുള്ള റീസൈക്ലിങ്ങിന് തമ്മിലുള്ള റേഷ്യോയാണ് recycle index എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. Then through flow becomes all output flows plus change in the storage. Now we'll see CI. CI, that is the recycling index, is equal to TSTC in the compartments divided by TST. CI means cycling index. CI is the recycling index and TST is the total system through flow in the total system through flow which is cycled. ഇങ്ങനെ കറങ്ങിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന total system through flow is the TST, and the recycling index actually gives a very negligible idea about the cycling rate. അപ്പോൾ എത്ര സ്പീഡിലാണ് ഇത് ഒരു മെറ്റീരിയൽ, ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ സൈക്ലിംഗ് ഇൻഡെക്സ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ റേഷ്യോ തരും. ഇപ്പം 6:4 എന്നൊക്കെ കിട്ടുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 8:4 എടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ you will get 2. So the cycling index will be 2 എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഒരു കാർബൺ സൈക്കിൾ, ഒരു കാർബൺ കമ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിൽ നിന്നും അടുത്തതിലോട്ട് സൈക്കിൾ ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട്, അല്ല സൈക്കിൾ ചെയ്ത് പോയപ്പോൾ 2 എണ്ണം പോയി എന്ന് പറയാം. പക്ഷേ the time taken for this is not shown in the cycling index. Recycling indexന്റെ ഒരേ ഒരു പ്രശ്നം എന്താന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നമ്പർ, you will get the number, അതായത് എത്ര കാർബൺ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എത്ര നൈട്രജൻ സൈക്കിൾ ചെയ്ത് പോയി എന്ന് കിട്ടും, പക്ഷെ എത്ര സമയം കൊണ്ടാണ് അത് സൈക്കിൾ ചെയ്തതെന്ന് കിട്ടാറില്ല. That is what is known as the recycle index or cycling index in an ecosystem. So with this I conclude today's session. Thank you.